Good morning, everyone. We are learning Mishna Bikurim. We were in Perek Gimel, chapter 3, up to Mishna Zayin, Mishna 7. Today we're going to do Mishna Zayin Ches, Mishna 7 and 8. But Rishona, originally, whoever knew how to read Hebrew, Kore, he would read. We're talking about the Mikra Bikurim. We're talking about the verses that a person recites when bringing Bikurim. And whoever knew how to read would read. Whoever didn't know how to read. And my Rambam in his commentary points out that in the beginning of the Second Temple period, many of the Jews who had returned from the Babylonian exile could not read Hebrew. So those who know how to read, they would read with him, which means they would dictate to him what to say, and he would repeat it. But because of this, people stopped bringing. They're embarrassed. So they stopped bringing Bikurim. Hiskino, therefore, the sages instituted that they would, in order to, again, get people back, the Chacham instituted that we are makri, that we dictate what to say to who knows how to read and who doesn't know how to read. Meaning anybody who brings Bikurim now doesn't read it on their own. It is dictated to them, and they repeat it, and they repeat after. Mishna Ches, Mishna 8, Ha'ashirim meviim bikureim. The wealthy people, the rich people, would bring their Bikurim, b'kalasei shal kesef v'shal zav, in baskets of silver and gold, which is really, the Barachnur explains that these were baskets were coated with silver or gold. Doesn't sound like they were solid gold or solid silver, but they were coated with silver and gold. That's how the wealthy would bring, because the basket is something the Torah tells us to bring the Bikurim in, and therefore they would adorn it, they'd make it nice. While the poor people would bring them in baskets of peeled willow branches. Nitzarim shel arava kalufa, baskets of nitzarim shel arava, willow branches, kalufa, that were peeled. Apparently, when they were peeled, they looked more beautiful. I mean, without their bark, they looked more beautiful. That's what their baskets were made of. And the baskets and the bikurim were given to the kohanim. This is going on the poor people's gift. When the poor people would bring their bikurim and the baskets, they would give both to the kohanim. And the reason was because the poor people's bikurim was typically very small or skimpy. And in order to give more significance to their gift, they gave the basket also. The wealthy, on the other hand, who had plenty of bikurim, their baskets that were coated with silver or gold, they were returned to them. Okay, we continue with the laws of Rechilas, Klal Test chapter 9 from the Chavetz Chaim, and we are in paragraph 5 of the illustrations that the Chavetz Chaim gives us that he's going through. Now, this illustration is talking about a situation where you know that someone wants to make a shidduch, someone wants to make a match for his daughter with someone's son, and you know that the boy has some very serious shortcomings or faults to him. So the Chavetz Chaim said the first thing he's going to address when it comes to these situations is what people take for granted they can say when they can't. So Hay begins, you have to be very careful not to start speaking badly about one of the sides, about things that really have no relevance. They're really not important. This chassan is a simple, straightforward person. He's not that sharp to be able to catch on to people who are cunning and tricky. Or instead of being kind of, joking around and fooling around like young men of his age. He doesn't do that. He's more serious. So what do people say about him? The fool. Something wrong with him. Because he's not acting like anybody else, or he's not that sharp. He's a fool. And that becomes a reason why people don't want to consider a match with him. Or even to go as far as to break a match that was already made. Or many other similar very bad things can come from this. And this, the Chavetz Chaim applies the verse, that the tongues of those who speak deceit be cut off for this. Not only are they speaking Lashon Harah by doing this, because by these kinds of irrelevant and invaluable things, you're not going to find any of the conditions mentioned before. There's no practical purpose from it. You're not intending anything good from it. Besides that, because the other thing is that besides you're speaking Lashon Harah, you're doing worse. You're being Maitzi Shemra. You're spreading a false information about a person. He's not a fool just because he doesn't like joking around with the other kids, or because of the other young men, or because of the fact that he's not sharp enough to catch on to people's tricks. And even if it's true that he is on the more serious side, that he's not the sharpest tack because he can't catch on to people's tricks. At the end of the day, you got to fulfill all the conditions mentioned before, that there's going to be some kind of practical, that there's some real tiyela, some real purpose from it. And what's the purpose? The purpose is just to go ahead and knock someone. And therefore, you have to be very, very careful. These are the kinds of things that he says a person has to be very careful to steer away from. Because again, this is not something derogatory. It's not a reason not to consider him. Just because you think that it's not, great, or that or people tend to put a person down for that, that's not necessarily, that's not a reason to go ahead and to give him a bad name when it comes to marriage. Therefore, the Chavetz Chaim, this is the Chavetz Chaim's example. What he says, this is obvious. He feels it's obvious. It really shouldn't be mentioned. But because it's unfortunately commonplace by people to do this, he therefore felt it's necessary to have to be explicit about it. Have a wonderful day.